Hello and welcome to Conversations with Catherine. I'm starting this off with a little music from Jordan Smith, Stand in the Light. So we're going to give it just a second to hopefully have some people join in the conversation. So exciting. I have been literally thinking about doing this for such a long time, and I'm so glad that I'm finally getting around to doing it, and I have so many people to thank. But in the meantime, there's Jasmine. Hey, darling, thank you for joining on. So I was just waiting to see if a few more people were going to jump on. I've had a lot of people tell me, I don't know if this is a good idea. No one wants to talk about grief. No one wants to talk about what's happening with grief and how we support each other. But when is there a more important time than to be talking about grief than right now in the state of the world the way it is now? And if we can put a little bit of joy back into the world, hopefully it'll dampen down some of the pain that everybody is experiencing. So welcome to Conversations with Catherine. This is something that I've put together. I'm going to be doing this every week on my Grief Inspired Business page. So if you're watching it somewhere else, make sure that you have signed up on my Grief Inspired Business page so that you will get notified of when I'm going to be doing this. But again, I'm going to be doing it every Sunday at 10 o'clock, and I am super excited. And what I want this to be is a conversation. I want people to be able to ask questions, to send me things, and to have the conversations that people want to have. And one of the things that I've found is that people, we as a society, we don't want to talk about grief. We don't want to talk about death. We don't want to talk about loss. I mean, even just thinking about COVID and everything that's been happening in the world, I've finally, we want to turn off our TVs. You stay tuned in, and then it gets to be too much and you want to turn it off. And there's so many other people who are grieving in this world. Hi, Deb. Thanks so much for joining. I'm so excited to have you here. Welcome to Conversations with Catherine. So why are we here? So the goal is really to have a conversation and teach you what you need to know to really support the people who are hurting. Sometimes we don't know what to do. And when we don't know what to do, we don't do anything at all. And I think that I even heard, I was reading somebody's comments. I have several friends who are part of the African American community, and maybe it was on the news. I don't know. I've been reading a lot. But anyways, the point of it is, they've been saying the only thing that's really worse than doing the wrong thing is doing nothing at all. So it's time for us to be able to stand up and to have these conversations around death and loss and grief, hopefully to prevent some of it, but also to just teach people how to support each other, because inevitably we're all going to lose people that we love. A lot of times it's sooner than we should. But whether you lose somebody that you expect to pass away, or you lose somebody who was surprisingly taken from you, the grief is real, the pain is real, and there's a process that happens. In terms of this conversation, there are multiple types of loss. Specifically, when I talk about loss, typically I talk about loss of death, loss. But there are so many other types of loss. So many people have lost their jobs right now. And so many people are grieving in other ways. The loss of marriages, the loss of expectations, the loss of jobs, the loss of loved ones. There's so much loss going on. And for us to ignore it is really a disservice to everyone in the world. So that's what I'm doing. My business name is Grief Inspired. The goal of the conversations with Catherine is to encourage you to take action, to be inspired to take action, or maybe try something different. Do something different than you've done in the past. Reach out to someone, see if you can help. Even when it's, hey, I don't even know what to say. I don't know what to do. It's taking action and being brave enough to do that. And as I was preparing for this talk, I was reminded by the quote from Rumi, who says that the wound is the place where the light enters. When we grieve, when we lose people that we love, when we lose our jobs, when we lose our marriages, it's a wound. But that wound can be a place where the light enters, right? And so what does that mean, and how do you do that? That's what these conversations are about. How do you take something that's devastating, that's all-encompassing, that's life-changing, and create something out of it, learn from it, grow from it? When we lose someone we love, or when we hear about someone else's loss, we have a choice. We can do something, we can step up, we can say something. When we lose people that we love, we can choose to be a victim, we can choose to suffer, but we can also make another choice. And that choice is, thank you, Vanessa, so good to see you. You know, and the choice is we don't have to suffer. We can do something else. So that's why I'm creating these conversations with Catherine, is hopefully to get you talking, to get you thinking about it. I have a really hard time in some of my grief groups getting people to communicate, to talk and say, like, this is what the problem is. Because none of us, I was listening to Brene Brown today, because I listen to her all the time because she's so inspirational for me and so empowering. But it's, you know, we don't want to be vulnerable. We don't want to say, I don't know how to do this. And when grief strikes, when grief struck me, and Deb, I know you know, when grief struck you, you go, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how I'm going to get through the day, let alone the rest of my life without our sons, without our daughters, without our spouses, without our beloved friends. It's hard. It's real like stuff. So the pain of grief cracks us open. And Rumi says the wound is the place where the light enters. Let the light enter. Hi, Shelley. Thank you so much for joining. So if you have questions or comments as I'm talking, feel free to put them in the comments, and I'll either do my best to answer them here today or keep them for additional weeks. So again, I'm doing these conversations. This is the first one, so welcome to my first one. Very excited. I don't know if you can see it, but I'll show you. So I have my coronavirus shirt on to commemorate the day, commemorate the event. And like I was saying, let's see, let me get back to my notes. We can choose to be a victim to our grief, or we can choose to do something different. And what I found is that there's a huge void in the conversations that people are having. There's a void because no one talks about what grief is. No one talks about what happens when we lose the people that we love. And it doesn't just go away. It impacts every facet of our lives. And it's so overwhelming and powerful. And yet the crazy thing about it is that we all do it alone. We struggle alone. We struggle in silence. And I don't want that. So these conversations, you know, not only are they important, but in the world today that we have, these conversations are necessary. We need to continue to talk. We need to continue to learn, and we need to stand up and support each other. particularly, and I'm not even talking about the people that you don't know, all the people who have been ravaged by COVID-19, all the people that have died wrongfully. I'm talking about just the people that you know, the people that are in your immediate circle, the people that you walk with through your lives or have at one point. So there is a huge void, and what I want this to be is, a conversation. And I had somebody suggest maybe move it to Zoom so that you guys can comment too. And that may happen. We'll see. But because it's a conversation, it's also a fight for love. And it's a choice to not let pain win. It's a choice to remember and be reminded that the reason why we experience grief at all is because we had expectations that are thwarted, because we love the people in our lives. And when we lose them, whether it's from an illness or an accident or suicide or premature birth, it's all painful. And the reason why that pain is inextricably linked to the love that we feel in our heart. So I want these conversations to not be about loss, not to be necessarily about the pain of death, right? Because we could spend all day long saying how horrible it is and how much pain I feel. This is not a support group. It's a conversation to say, what are we going to do about it now? What can I do? How can I be inspired, grief inspired, to take action and do something different? That's what we want the conversation to be. And it's about keeping the memory alive of the people that we love. And it's about taking their life, taking their impact on you, and moving it and using it to propel you forward, moving it to inform your future. How can you be different? What have you learned from them? How can you grow? Grief changes us. Loss of any kind changes us. We can't go backwards. We can only go forward. So for those of you who are here and are seeing me for the first time, I want to just share real briefly why this is so important to me. I had what I thought was everything. I had an amazing career. I had got married. I had a beautiful house. Everything in my life was the white picket fence. My life is perfect. And the only thing that I needed was a baby. And so I went and decided to try for pregnancy, and that was a challenge in and of itself. But what happened for me is that I was completely blindsided because I had no idea that as I was pregnant and preparing for the birth of my son and decorating the room and buying all the stuff and taking all the courses, I had no idea that in just a few months, he wouldn't be with me anymore. I didn't know that my baby could die. And it was really devastating. And that whole process that I went through is a whole story in and of itself. And you can find some of it on my YouTube channel, which is also Grief Inspired. I share it a lot of times on other Facebook posts. But anyways, I lost my son, Jackson Robert. He was premature at 27 weeks. He was in the NICU for 42 days before he wasn't going to make it. And we had to make the decision to remove life support. And I'll tell you what this conversation is about today is not about that story. Again, that's another whole nother conversation that we can have. But what this is about is what happened to me after that. You know, you get through the event. I didn't think I'd ever be able to actually, hold my son until he passed away. That was challenging enough. But what I had no idea about was how challenging the grief process after that was going to be. And losing him was, let me tell you, the loneliest experience that I ever had. Yes, everyone showed up for the funeral. Everyone was wonderful. People sent me cards and white flowers, which I joke about how much I hate white flowers now because they just died too in my living room as I grieved. But that's a whole different conversation too. But here's the thing is I was left alone, and that the people who were around me, even the people who were closest to me, didn't know how to support me. They didn't know what to say. They didn't know what to do. It was so uncomfortable for them. It was awful for me, but it was uncomfortable for them too. And I don't want it to be that way. And so I created Grief Inspired, right, with the mission that no one should have to grieve alone. That if you are grieving, you should not feel alone. And if you know that someone that you love is grieving the loss of whatever it is, the loss of their job, their loss of their loved one, the loss of a friend, an acquaintance, there's grief there. And I want you to know it's my mission so that you guys will know what to do and what to say so that we don't have to avoid these conversations, although not always comfortable. Not always pleasant. And Deb, you're exactly right. No one likes to talk about grief. But I'll tell you what, when it happens to you, you need to talk about it. Because we can have a whole nother conversation around what happens when you push down your grief, when you avoid it. Right? Because it starts to fester and it eats you. And when there's grief in the world, the grief that we see right now, grief is pain. Grief is pain and it needs to be expressed. And if you don't deal with it in a way that's really healthy, it's going to come out in ways that are really not going to be supportive. They're not going to be good for you. They're not going to be good for the people around you. And it's not going to be good for the people in the world. So that's what's really important. So that's why I created these conversations, is because I spent years trying to figuring out how to do the grief thing. And I thought that in my world that I was just going to have to be miserable forever. And, Deb, I'm sure you can relate to this. You lose a child, and even people who talk to you say, I can't imagine. Like, how do you recover from that? How do you recover? And how do you ever be happy again? When we lose the people we love, we wonder, can we ever be happy again? I didn't have anybody to tell me, yes, absolutely, you can be happy again. You need to do the work. You need to get through the grief. And hopefully you'll have people around you who are supporting you. Which is also why I want to do these, is so that all of you who are watching, you know that it's perfect. And I guess this is my number one tip for all of you. If you know someone's grieving, go to them, talk to them, send them a text, call them, and say, I don't even know what to say. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do, but I want you to know that I'm thinking about you, and I want you to know that I care. And if there's something that you can think of that I can do for you, I am here, and I'm willing to listen. And again, you have to be willing to hear what they have to say, because those conversations are hard too. And that's what I do in my coaching business, is I have been gifted to, my book is called The Gifts of Grief. My grief has been a gift in that I am able to use my gift and the lessons that I've learned to support people on their grief journey. So that doesn't mean that you, as a friend or loved one of somebody who's grieving, it doesn't mean you have to dig in and do the same things I'm doing. All you really need to do is just show that you care. And there's lots of ways that you can do that. And I have all kinds of videos on it, and I'll be dropping those tips here as we have conversations. But today I wanted to sort of set up the framework for, what my conversations are. And here's the thing is, everyone says, well, I can't help them because everybody grieves in their own way. And yes, everyone will grieve in their own way. But sometimes we use that as an excuse to step back and say, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know. They're grieving in their own way. I don't know how to go near that. So I'm just going to let them go until they get better. Not a good thing to do. I don't recommend it. So it's really about practical advice for those who are friends and family of those who have lost their loved ones. How can you support them? And then eventually, here's the thing, is that if you're listening and you haven't lost anyone close to you in a while, know that it's going to happen. I'm sorry to say. Everyone dies. It's the circle of life. It's going to happen. We need to be able to prepare for it. We need to know what to do when it does happen for ourselves, how to support ourselves, and we need to know how to support the people that we love. Because like Deb says, grief is pain, but grief can also be love, and it can be a manifestation of that pain in a way that's really serving of you and of the rest of the world. And so I don't want to get too deep. It's not about getting deep, but the takeaway is that the world needs positive, uplifting conversations right now. We need to talk about death. We need to talk about loss, and we need to talk about grief because it's all around us. And we can take that grief and we can channel that grief into pain and hurt, or we can find a way to come together, to connect, to share, to talk about it, to empathize with other people who are also going through it and say, hey girl, I got you. I know what this is. I know what this is about and what Grief Inspired as a business does, right? So I do coaching. I have some gifts. I have a really nice grief gift basket that's becoming very popular right now. I do one-on-one coaching for people as well. It's about having the conversation. That's why I call it Conversations with Catherine. That's where you start, is with the conversation. And we all need to keep the conversation going. I am also going to be releasing videos every Monday that are going to be pre-recorded videos onto YouTube. I want to encourage you to subscribe to my YouTube channel as well if you want to get notified for those. The one tomorrow, appropriately enough, is how you can help a friend in grief. What's my advice to do there? And one of the things that, I really try to do is I don't want these conversations to be clinical. I don't want to have the conversation, these are the 5 stages of grief and this is what you need to do. That's not what it's about. It's about people caring and saying, I don't know what to do. And I want to learn what it is to do, because someday I'm going to be the one on the other side of grief. I'm going to be the one that's grieving. And I don't want you to be like I was, not knowing what to do, not knowing where to go, not knowing what to turn, but most importantly, not knowing that there was a way to find happiness again. I just didn't know it was available. And I can tell you it is. I am living proof that you can find happiness again after grief, after losing the people that you love, after divorce, after loss. I have lost a dear, dear friend of mine, and it's going to make me cry a little bit, but it's a loss. And I didn't lose her meaning she died. I lost her because she chose not to be in my circle anymore. She blocked me from everything. She didn't want to be part of my world anymore. And I totally get and respect that. But it hurts my heart. And it's a loss. And so I'm grieving that. My marriage, right? Anyone who's been through a divorce, you know what loss is. Divorce is loss. And I don't talk about my divorce a lot because I'm still personally processing it all. But I have been through losing someone and feeling so devastated, not knowing what I was going to do. Hi, Carol. I'm thinking about your husband right now. I know what that's like, and I don't want you guys to have to grieve alone. I want you to find the support that you need wherever that is. And there's lots of different places. I am certainly not the only one who can offer coaching support. But sometimes people go to therapists in search of answers, and sometimes there are sometimes there are answers that therapists can give us. But when we lose the people that we love, I think what we need most is to be with somebody who understands loss, and it's understanding loss firsthand. And I used to think that because I lost a child, that I could only help people who have also lost a child, and particularly infants. So I spend a lot of time in that space because I know that well. But what I can tell you is grief is the same. Losing the people that you love hurts, and you go through a whole myriad of emotions, and it's a physical and mental process, and it overwhelms you. And everybody expects you to just keep going on while you're in grief. And the kids still need to be fed, and you still need to go to work, and you still need to clean the house, and there's laundry to be done. And the world around you just expects you to keep moving on as if nothing had happened. And I don't want that for you. So my tagline is no one should grieve alone. And I'm going to be doing these conversations every Sunday, probably 30 minutes, maybe longer, depending on what people ask about. But I want to encourage you to get into the conversation, to be inspired, grief inspired, to take action, to reach out to someone you know who might be hurting, and just tell them that you care. That's a great place to start. Tell them that you're thinking about them. And don't just do it once and done and think that you're fine. We who are grieving, we grieve for years and years. It's not an overnight thing. It doesn't just magically disappear. Oh, God, we wish it did. Oh, if there was a pill, if we could take a magic pill and just make our grief and the pain of the grief and the loss disappear, wouldn't that just be amazing? Who would buy that pill? Oh, I would invest in the company and buy lots of stock and all of the pills. But that's not the reality that we live in. And so I think that one of the things that I've learned is it's the connectedness, it's the being together, it's the growing together, it's the growing through grief, it's looking into that wound, as Rumi says, and knowing that that wound is the place where the light enters. But you have to let the light enter. But you can. And there is a way to be, I call it being grief inspired. I consider myself to be grief inspired because I've taken what I've learned, and I've had it impact my life in a way that's positive. And so I'm super, super excited about that. And I want that for everyone who's grieving. So I want to thank you for being part of my first day here in Conversations with Catherine. Please let me know, leave some thoughts, leave some comments below. It's not a conversation if I don't hear from you. So I would love very much to get feedback. Let me know what you think would be good here. Let me know what you liked about today. If you found something useful, please tag it in the comments. And let's just keep the conversation going. And I will see all of you next Sunday. Again, my video's coming out tomorrow with tips on how you can help a friend who's in grief. So be sure to watch that, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and just keep on loving everyone. Love, love, love. This world needs love. The world needs positivity, and there wouldn't be grief if there wasn't love. So let's put some more love to counteract the grief in the world. Thanks so much. Bye, everybody. Thanks for watching.